I'm just looking at Keir Starmer's 10 pledges because, he says in that leadership contest, I've seen the clips like flying around on Twitter where he's basically like, he's not just saying, oh, I think we should abolish tuition fees. He's like, it is morally wrong that we have tuition fees. And has he reneged on all of the 10 pledges from the leadership contest?
But I think that he's in a really tricky position at the moment. I think that what he's essentially trying to do is trying to pit himself as the guy who will not leave the Treasury bankrupt. And I think perhaps announcing a policy which is we're going to eradicate student debt would frighten a lot of potential voters. And I understand that. But a conversation we could be having is getting rid of the interest on those loans, because it's obscene that kids are graduating university at 23, and by the time they're 29, their £41,000 loan is now £56,000, and they've actually been paying towards it. You might as well take out like a good local supermarket loan rather than because you'd get a really low interest rate compared to that.
My interest rate is higher than what I'm paying it back. It's getting bigger than.
Didn't pay tuition fees.
Oh yeah, forget.
Fucking prick.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's
It's not because he went to Scotland, it's because his dad paid for it.
My dad gave me a blank check before the beginning of term.
Right, okay, 10 pledges. Number 1, economic justice. Increase income tax for the top 5% of earners, reverse the Tories' cuts in corporation tax, and clamp down on tax avoidance, particularly of large corporations. No stepping back from our core principles.
Not once.
That final sentence, I think, would be the killer there for them, because he clearly has stepped back from his core principles.
Several times.
Most of the principles. If you don't like these principles, I've got others. Number 2, social justice. Abolish universal credit and end the Tories' cruel sanctions regime. Set a national goal for well-being to make health as important as GDP. Invest in services that help shift to a preventative approach. Stand up for universal services and defend our NHS. Support the abolition of tuition fees and invest in lifelong learning.
So for the former, he did try. He has pledged to, but the latter.
No.
You can do that little.
Yeah, so I've done it. Yeah, so tuition fees. That's a big old reversal. Number 3, climate justice. Put the Green New Deal at the heart of everything we do. There is no issue more important to our future than the climate emergency. A Clean Air Act to tackle pollution locally. Demand international action on climate rights. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in more detail next, so I don't want to hang back, but I actually think they are kind of sort of semi-committed to that, and I think maybe not in the same sense, because obviously in the Corbyn manifesto there was that huge new Green New Deal component that was radical investment in infrastructure and overhauling of the economy, and I'm actually really interested in what Labour is going to do in terms of green energy. So
don't entice me, I'm so excited.
That's coming later, dear listener, get ready for that. Promote peace and human rights, number 4. No more illegal wars. Introduce a Prevention of Military Intervention Act and put human rights at the heart of foreign policy. Remove all UK arms sales and make us a force for international peace and justice.
Very Corbyn, that one in particular.
Yeah, that was
extremely Corbyn.
Super Corbyn, actually. Super anti-NATO, which was one of Corbyn's big pledges.
Yeah, it's quite anti-NATO.
Yeah.
He also does quite a few events with BAE, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And actually during the football, when the World Cup, I don't know, you two watch it more than I do. The World Cup was the last big thing, right? Or Euros?
World
I don't
Cup
know, you guys were watching a lot of football and everyone was watching it.
In fact, a lot of people were watching a lot of football.
Anyway, during that, yes, he did watch a few of the games and invited a lot of business leaders who might be involved in some of the things you just laid out.
But yeah, I mean, he hasn't invaded anywhere yet, so he has
had a chance.
Yeah, give him time. We'll see about the no more illegal wars thing. 5.
Funny point to make.
Where would you go for? He goes for Uruguay.
What would be the worst imagery, like an attack on social democracy? So
Isle of Wight
or something.
Isle of Wight. Yeah, definitely.
That's the worst place you could do.
Could you invade your own country?
Yeah. Yeah, you can. In my plan. You make it okay, so you know how we have a big problem with swans in the UK?
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Huge problem with them. We deport all of the swans to the Isle of Wight.
Perfect.
What about the residents of the Isle of Wight?
Well, that's an invasion, Ed. We don't care what happens to them.
5. Common ownership. Public services should be in public hands, not making profits for shareholders. Support common ownership of, here we go, rail, mail, energy and water, end outsourcing in our NHS, local government and justice system. I mean, that is just all. That's all gone, right? That's all a complete reversal. Other than common ownership of energy, British Energy was the the conference announcement. That was the big conference announcement for him.
Yeah,
wasn't
but
it?
I think that will be altered quite a bit. I think that will change radically. Have you got more pledges? Because otherwise we can get into energy.
Yeah, I do have more pledges, but I mean, it's defend migrants' rights. I mean, no. Strengthen workers' rights and trade unions. Haven't seen him on a picket line. Radical devolution of power, wealth and opportunity. Yeah, Keir, I'm also really looking forward to the coronation. 9, equality. Yeah, I think he has kind of stuck to that. 10, effective opposition to the Tories.
I think what's interesting about Starmer, particularly with student debt, like, who does this appeal to? Is a lot of like taxes in being introduced is to be like when the Tories do it, they make sure the elderly pay less tax and the young pay more tax because the elderly are the Tories' base. If you're alienating the young people, but not to the benefit of elderly people, that's just lowering. You're not enticing anyone to get on your side. Like, who's this for? It's just.
I look at this and I think you can look in the same way, like going through those pledges and looking about the stuff that he said he would adopt and then has like, you know, done the opposite. It seems to me that Starmer's Labour strategy is, well, it's not actually just to sort of take the votes for granted of the traditional Labour base. It's not just to go, look, those people are always going to vote for us, so I don't need to worry about them, and then try and set about convincing your swing voters that will helpfully get them to win an election. This is almost like actively alienating the base. It seems weirdly antagonistic.
I actually disagree with you.
Go on.
No, I slightly agree, but also disagree. So I think that he's going after the swing voters rather than the base. And I think that possibly a few months before the general election is when he'll start appealing to the people who would traditionally vote Labour. So I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of months, maybe even 6 months before, you'd start seeing him unveil maybe a housing policy. I was thinking like, this is just off the top of my head, something like maybe 110% mortgage back guarantee. If you're a renter who's paid 7 months rent, you get a government-backed 110% mortgage, similar to what they did in the 80s. But energy is where they get exciting, and energy is kind of the only proposal on the table that I think appeals to the under 40s. And it's not just that it's going to be green. What they're looking at is making the UK completely self-sufficient, so you wouldn't have a potential energy crisis in 20 years' time again. So what they want to do is build nuclear power stations. They take 10 years, and Nick Clegg famously 10 years ago denied the country any construction of a nuclear power station.
Yeah.
And where would we be if it hadn't been for Nick Clegg?